I'm not sure.
Okay, all right, thank you.
What day is that?
I think it's August 20th.
Oh, yeah, I can't plan that far.
Yeah, it hasn't made my calendar yet either.
What organization is the parking?
The athletic boosters.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. 325 people. All right, I guess then I would move that we recommend the council that Matt be appointed to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Do we need to come back from? I don't know if you want a formal motion to come back, but.
No,
Okay.
that's not required by law.
I know, I think last time you wanted to do it, so I just asked.
Well, no, I don't, I'm not in the habit of doing this.
No objection to Matt.
No objection.
All right, good deal.
Did you see some concerns?
What?
Not yet, I don't think. So some concerns.
Did we do that?
No, I skipped it. Just,
That was intentional, or?
no, I skipped it because I didn't think there was any citizens here to be concerned. Oh,
You forgot about me.
well, you're on the agenda now.
Okay.
And let's, I'll distribute these pictures, but to kind of explain how we got here. China, you want a copy?
You're here.
There's two different sets because I was making the copies and I screwed up. But Larissa sent all of council an email and explained some things that are going on with her property, and we don't need to go through them item by item, but I got to ask you, you just sent me 4 more, like about 15 minutes ago. Is
We now have to make sure.
it based on recollection, it looks like it's getting worse out there, not better.
He's been out. He's attempted to do a few things, but in the midst of doing that, he's made bigger messes, and no one understands what he's doing. He's just continuously bringing more and more big, large pieces back. We now have skunks and raccoons that he will not remove.
This is probably being taped.
This is being recorded, yes.
Okay, should we have Larissa come up to the podium?
Sure.
I don't know if they'll pick up your voice.
You can introduce yourself and list your address, please.
Sure. My name is Larissa Ortiz, and I reside at 621 Echo Road in Perrysburg.
Thank you.
Just trying to think of some of the pictures from all this equipment. In some of these pictures, this equipment it's stored on the property right behind your yard.
So these are pictures that I've taken since day one when he started this process. He, meaning the owner of 12441 Grogan Place. To my understanding, he had a company that was facing 25 and he was evicted, but he owned the building that is directly behind my residence. So in moving all of his equipment and other gadgets, he has now created, it's almost like a junkyard that's in my backyard, just on the other side of my fence. Health and safety concerns are the biggest. Although I keep my kids inside my fence, if they lose a ball, it's not something that I'll even consider them to go out. Tim, you've been there firsthand and you've seen this. The grass has grown. It's probably about 3.5 feet tall now. In some areas, he has taken some large equipment and really came through and flattened out a lot, but he's also pulled out shrub from, I have no idea where it has came from. But there's just more and more equipment pieces that keep coming. And as of right now, there's one piece that's almost looks like 2 prongs, and it's about 6 to 8 feet tall, and it's just standing up on the corner of our fence post. Along with a claw, and I don't know terminology of these pieces of equipment, but it's a claw that's sitting on a forklift little pallet, and they're rusted claws facing right up. So even if the neighbor has a dog, even if the dog runs back there, there's just a lot going on back there. And of course, he has really aggravated the animals. So we have, like I said, we have raccoons now. We have a huge family of skunks that I just found yesterday. We have chipmunks. I mean, I expect animals, but it's getting pretty out of control. So the neighbor and I just spoke last night, and he's investing in having, I think it's called critter control or something like that out. But each animal caught, not guaranteed what type of animal, is a fee. And that adds up quickly, especially with all we have going on in our backyard. So I think a couple months ago, if not a month and a half ago, Tim and we spoke. I said it started out with major mosquito issues because when it rains, it's like a swampland back there now because everything is just growing inside of all of these tractors and equipment and water is just sitting. So I lined my entire fence posts with the tiki torches, thinking that while the kids are outside playing, that would help. My oldest daughter is 11 and she doesn't even want to go outside because the mosquitoes are just out of control. So I'd like to know what kind of plan is set in place or what timeline am I looking at? Because we're already into the summer and this started months ago.
You know, that's how we got here tonight. And Larissa said, all these photos, just so everyone understands, when you see a fence there, that's your backyard fence. I mean, I can remember from being there. And what happened is, and you're welcome to stay at the podium or have a seat if you're tired of standing. After Larissa sent us the email, I started asking around, you know, what the history was, because I think you mentioned in the email you talked to Brody and I think you talked to China. And we have the property maintenance ordinance procedure. I'm explaining this really to Corey and Barry right now. But that's kind of, it's not terribly effective in dealing with something like this. Like I think, Brody, you told me the guy who's had the car parked in his yard down at East Boundary in, I guess, Indiana. He's been cited. You've had him in court. And he owes about $3,600 in fines, but you're never going to touch him.
In order for that to really be successful, it requires some spirit of cooperation with the person. They have to be motivated by a financial penalty in order to really want to use that. One of the things that's on our agenda today is a more aggressive action that we've never done before, which is what we call abatement. And basically, we provide the property owner notice of what's wrong with the property, give them a reasonable opportunity to fix it, which I think in this case it's been more than reasonable to try to fix it. And should they fail to do that, we go in and we solve that problem for them. And that can, you know, as you'll probably hear tonight, can include cleaning up the property, cutting the yard, towing equipment out, and all the way up to demolishing buildings. I can say that the pictures that are shown in here, while they look bad, it doesn't do it justice what it looks like today. It's unbelievable, much like what TMT was when he had that business. Last time I was out there and spoke with the property owner, I pulled up on a complaint of an unlicensed truck pulling an unlicensed trailer with an unlicensed truck on the trailer that it was pulling, parked in the middle of the road. So the police called him, we had a conversation, he said, well, I don't know what you want to do, I don't have any time to fix this right now. This isn't a choice. I mean, so I guess what I'm getting at is, you know, the property maintenance, the traditional route appeals to people's common sense, but when people don't operate in the same sphere of reality as what we might up here, those rules don't really apply. So I'm a fan, and we've kind of been waiting to try to get this abatement process under control because I think short of us doing it, it can't and may physically not get done.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, and this is a civil process. I think that's what I learned after I talked to Brody. I talked to China, and she explained to me what this is. And apparently you've done a presentation on it. And I remember Marty Aubrey before you, one of the last things he said to this committee was he kept talking about a civil action to deal with these problems.
Yeah,
and I never knew what it was.
Well, yeah, and it's not something that's new to every other jurisdiction. For whatever reason, Perrysburg's never done it. But like Brody was saying, for something like this, you really are taking the counts that you apply when you're doing a criminal action, the minor misdemeanor, because it's a minor misdemeanor. It only has a fine cost. but they're only $100 per count. So just in conversation with Brody, I said, how many would, we're looking at something like 100 counts that we have to do to make it meaningful, which just really is, no court wants to type in 100 counts. Taking the trial on 100 counts, it's just, and again, because when it comes down to, otherwise they just pay the fine costs. If I put 5 counts on here, they'd just say, I'll pay the $500 and be done with it, which has happened before. We've done that for certain cases. So this is just too large of a project or scope really for what the minor misdemeanor is meant to deal with. And when it does financially make sense, so like the one you're talking about, the car, he did move both of those cars recently. But that might have been finally financially between the 2 trials that he had, he's decided, okay, I want to be owing this much money, he's doing it. But that's even 2 cars, it does not compare to what this is, so.
Yeah, for sure.
And it allows us to put lien on all titled property, right?
Yeah.
Even
but
car-
they-
even
so, yeah,
vehicles?
So she can go through yes, the court, as part of them not paying fines and costs on a minor misdemeanor, they can block a license.
Right.
So some of these people, when they're kind of an eccentric personality, that might not really, or a business is different than the individual, like the case of the car by Kingston residents. So.
Yeah.
That's,
Well,
But it is civil, so that would be Kate's area, not my area, so I can't.
Kate, I know
So
you said you've
what-
gone to school on this too.
I did. So what happened was this case went over to the prosecutor's office sometime last fall, and China said, I think it's time that we need to talk about doing abatements for the city of Perrysburg. It's never happened here before. Let's look at this. And I said, great, let me take a class, because I've never done an abatement before. So I took a class, and what I've learned is that there are really 3 ways to abate properties in the state of Ohio. The easiest one, and the one we're going to use, is Revised Code 71530, which essentially says that we can file for an injunction when a municipal ordinance is being violated on the property. So that's what we're going to do, is we're going to file for an injunction and termination because of multiple ordinances are being violated on the property. Along with that, we're also going to file under 3767, which is nuisance abatement per the state code. So we're going to do this, we're going to file under both sections, if you look at the draft motion.
Okay.
The other 2 ways that you can do it is 376741, but that's for residential buildings, and 376711, which is for criminal activity. And that's really intended when there's like gang activity going on in the property or things like that. So the method we're going to use is Revised Code 71530 and 3767. And essentially what I've done already is I've drafted up a draft. This is just a first draft. I haven't completed this motion regarding this property off of the summary from which I've received from Mark, having had extensive discussion with him about the fact that mid-2021, Planning and Zoning received the complaints regarding this. In August 16th, Mark went out and did his first investigation. He sent a notice of violation on August 18th, which I think I missed, which is why this is a draft. That the property was to be corrected no later than October 2nd, 2021. Somehow that original notice of violation that was sent certified mail got lost in the mail. We're just going to leave that statement where it is. So once we realized that it was lost in the mail as we were tracking that certified notice, Mark went back out and personally delivered on August 31st to the manager of TMT, which was the business that this property owned next to the property. So personal service was made August 31st. That was notice that the violations needed to be corrected by October 15th. On November 15th, Mark did an inspection and no remedies had occurred. That was when it went to the prosecutor's office, and then this discussion about abatement began. So Mark then did an inspection May 4th, still no violations. So he did a notice of violations with a 45-day to remediate on May 5th, 2022. And as of today, as you can see from the pictures and from our knowledge, nothing has been done. So we are now in a position where we can file this motion for abatement. It will be filed the first week of August because these hearings are often set quickly and I'm out of town and I don't want them to be set the week that I'm out of town. So this will be filed the first week of August. But then there's no guarantee as to the timeline, because the judge does have the right to say, even though I think you've given them more than enough time to remedy this, I'm going to give them more time to remedy this before I let you go in and do this yourselves. So we have to keep in mind that, and as the two attorneys on this committee can agree, sometimes court is not the fastest way. But the motion will be filed the first week in August, and then we will see where we go in the court.
So are we meeting all timelines now? We qualified for all abatement
Yes,
timelines?
we more than met
So-
timelines.
I guess why aren't, I get that you're on vacation, but the court usually.
Because the court initially will set a hearing very quickly, and I don't want them to set.
Is it like
a hearing
within
ahead of
7
time.
days or something?
28.
Within 28?
Yeah, and that week I'm on vacation, I don't want it to, I just want to file it the first week of August
Okay.
to guarantee that I'm not suddenly calling China and saying, I need you to go to.
Yeah, but they need, so, yeah, you do you.
Thank you. So we're going to file this the first week of August. This will be our first abatement action, but I believe that the motion is correct, mostly because I've stolen it from somebody else in another jurisdiction.
That's the best legal word you can do.
But let me understand, these don't go to a jury trial. This is all you're seeking equitable relief, so it's just the judge?
But it should be preliminary
It
injunction
should be a
hearing.
preliminary injunction, so the judge should issue based off of the motion and then make a decision as to whether or not they want to give them more time to abate this themselves. We also have to see, the other thing that has to be researched before the first week of August is if there are any lien holders or mortgage on this property, because they need notice of this as well, because once we file, if the judge, they have the right to come in, step in and say, wait, we'll fix it. City, don't fix it.
Well, because we're gonna,
Because-
our liens are gonna jump at it.
Right, because what will happen.
Oh, yeah, we'll get
What
priority.
happens is that once if we do this right, if we do all of the notices correctly, and we notify all the lien holders, and we notify the mortgage, once we do it ourselves, our lien is first. And so anyone who has a lien on this property at this time doesn't want us to jump. So it's to their benefit to come in and say, city, stop, we'll fix it ourselves.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's gonna trigger a lot, if there's a mortgage on there, it'll trigger the
Yeah.
acceleration clause, the abatement action will, they'll be able to join and trigger a potential foreclosure. Yeah, there'd be more than
Yeah,
one party
there's-
involved, if taxes aren't paid, the.
My understanding is that the taxes are up to date. I
But
did-
most likely, they're also, because our auditor's pretty,
Yeah, is, of all the things that are going on, that's not one of the things that are going on.
No.
So we are prepared, fully aware of the problems with the property, planning to move forward with this motion.
and just to be clear for her sake, the city's footing the bill for this action.
This
This
is
is-
us.
yeah, this
Well,
is-
in this, yeah,
I mean, we're,
in the
the
sense that
cost for the attorney stuff. I
the
mean,
attorneys are sitting in the room.
The city has a significant interest in making sure this doesn't happen
Yes.
to our citizens, so this is.
Yeah, this is not an action that you may, I suppose you could get called as a witness, but you would, other than that, this is not going to require anything on your part.
Okay.
Well, I think I assume you have or you'll have the photos.
I have an entire packet from Mark. It
Okay.
will be exhibits A through whatever I'm
Okay.
at.
Okay, I just want to make
That
sure.
show, that demonstrate to the court the letters that were sent, the photos that were taken with each letter as they were sent. And Mark is going to do photos the week before we actually file these,
really?
so that we can say, as of July, fill in the date that he takes the photos, this has still not been remedied.
Okay.
So we can provide all of those as exhibits to the judge, so that the judge can see. We're also going to provide copies of our code section, because I don't like it when judges have to look things up and they won't look things up, so that the judge understands what it is that chapters 120, 1225 and 1444 actually are, and what they're saying, and how this is a violation, and how we got here.
Let me ask you a more global question, Kate. Does this process, I mean, would you follow this in the case of more extreme cases like this, like Larissa has? I mean, or would, I don't think you'd do every single.
No, you don't want to
property
abate
that
every
is-
property. This is for the big problem children. Like this one who has no interest in cooperating, has been given multiple chances, and has such a huge problem going on their property that it's not just an aesthetic issue. It's now affecting neighbors, it's affecting the whole neighborhood itself. This is designed for the big hammer, which is, I mean, one of the reasons that arguably, although China and I don't necessarily know that this is right, is that you don't have a huge number of those issues in the city of Perrysburg, which may be one of the reasons this wasn't done before us. But it's done everywhere. Everybody else does abatements. I mean, the city of Columbus, realizing that's a whole different situation than us, but they have a whole unit that this is what they do.
Oh, geez.
And Toledo does it.
Townships and
Yeah.
villages will do abatements.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I mean, it's,
Yeah.
And just as far as the notice thing, I mean, really anything that we do through the zoning department, even by the regular misdemeanor zoning complaints, the amount of times that they've already visited them, sent them letters, given them time, it doesn't come to me until they've exhausted every option. And then even then, usually we'll say, send another letter, do this or that. And then some of these cases are ones where, maybe we file and we're trying to work with them, but we know it's not gonna go anywhere.
And I'm not worried about notice to the property owner. We just have to make sure that we do a title search and make sure that we know who all has interest in this
that's the,
property.
that's the notice.
So that everybody gets.
You have to do a PJR on it.
I don't know the answer to that, but-
Most of a preliminary judicial report for title holder, lien holders, title holders. Most likely it's gonna have to be attached to the complaint would be my guess. Because it is in foreclosures on banknotes, and this is kind of similar. But while China's here, and I know this is kind of stuff we've talked about in the past and maybe pushed on the road, should we be directing all of our zoning complaints to a more civil rather than and I guess I'm coming from a view that, one, a decent amount of our complaints on properties are owned by LLCs, so that creates a notice issue for criminal stuff and holding people personally liable. And two, when you make stuff like this a daily civil fine past the required notice and you let them rack up 30 days and then bring that to a civil court.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It's kind of like the same thing with like tax cases. Sometimes putting in a criminal court, it doesn't seem right. Most of these people don't have any criminal record, then all of a sudden they've got this criminal charge, they don't know what they're doing. I would say, maybe down the road that could occur. At this point, I think zoning can filter out which ones are big enough that they need to go this route, which one. The reality is most people, like he said, are reasonable. They don't want to be in a court system. They don't ever hit my desk. They talk to zoning, they take care of the issue. They don't want it sent to the prosecutor's office. The few that come through me are usually, people that they're just not your regular people that want to comply, maybe they're a little eccentric. And really, most of them aren't huge issues. They're things people are capable of doing, like paint the side of your shed, get the refrigerator off your front porch, things like that. And the reality is, me, I mean, I end up being essentially a mediator. But then these people come in, I just tell them, you don't need, you're an attorney, I will talk to you, I don't represent you, but we can have these conversations, we can figure this out, and I always dismiss it.
What do we do for lawn mowing, do you know?
That's totally separate.
That's not China, that's an issue that goes through the service department. So if we have a property that we believe needs to be mowed, we can send notice, and if they don't mow within 5 days, then service goes out and mows, and then we bill them on their
And
taxes.
it ain't cheap.
Yeah.
But let me understand here what Corey just asked. I thought we had the property maintenance ordinance, and then when Marty always made reference to civil actions, I assumed that was this.
It is under our current code.
Is there some intermediate civil?
We could redo the code.
Yeah.
What Corey's asking is it time to go through the code and restructure the code that we have for either exclusively a civil consequence or a hybrid civil criminal option, so that we could decide what to do? And it's definitely a discussion worth having. I'd like to get through this
Yeah.
first.
And I wanted to bring it
sort of
up.
experience this the first time and make sure I don't screw it up.
Because this is extreme. We should not, abatements realistically should come up at most maybe once a year, especially in a city like Perrysburg.
okay.
But what I'm getting at is you don't want the minor misdemeanor, because they will analyze, well, shoot, I keep my car out there $500, it bought me a year, and they'll look at it pragmatically rather than solving the issue. Where if you have a daily fine, if you are not in compliance, if you've been notified, you are racking up $50 a day, or we're gonna tow that car.
Yeah, and it comes down to a practical issue. Every case that we have, we sit, Jennifer, my paralegal, and I, how many days do we want to do? Do we want to do every other day? Because I have to be able to say that condition existed on, July 15th. Sometimes we'll do once a week, sometimes it's twice a month, whatever. And I can always add, zoning is different than other criminal cases because each day is a separate instance. So just like I can dismiss, and then there's a whole other month of cases I can refile on all those. But yeah, it's like you said, if someone knew every day that I keep doing this, it's gonna be an extra $50, they'd be tacked on in my property taxes. My guess is people would get things done a whole lot quicker.
You can do, I believe it's not limited to, it might be limited to property maintenance, but I think the scope is wide where you can go take care of a problem and bill it to them and put it as an assessment on their taxes.
Well, yeah, similar to what you're doing here with the nuisance.
But it's far simpler.
Far simpler, and you can do it in
Yeah.
smaller cases.
You're
So,
giving the administration the right that, hey, we went out and we gave them notice, they didn't correct it, we took pictures before we corrected the issue, we corrected it, and they would have to challenge the tax. They would have to do a tax appeal, I think, on that.
Oh, I see, okay, okay.
So that would be their,
and I think there are jurisdictions that have that, so if it gets to this, after this, and something you guys wanna look at, talk about, I mean, I know that Brody would be, sure it'd be a great relief to him to make it simpler in certain ways. I mean, they're not cases I love doing because they're not like any other criminal case, and it's just really me getting through to people like, hey, you gotta do this, let's get it done.
they have a different tone to them than the normal, like, criminal cases.
They're
You're like,
very-
you're not a bad person.
It's personal to
please.
them, it's always
Yeah.
very personal,
There's always a story.
Well,
and,
and
they wanna blame somebody else, so.
and some of these work. I mean, Brody, you showed me a book once, so maybe you probably still keep it, a notebook where you show the property looked like this when we got it. After we talked to him, worked with the property owner, here's what it did. It worked.
Well, that's the thing, they work with them way before it ever gets to me. But I'm like the lost cause people.
In China,
It's the
it's like
people that-
5% of what we deal with.
Okay.
What's that?
You probably see less than 5% of what we
Yes, I mean, I am one of the ones that they're just like, beating their head against walls, people will not negotiate, listen, and then finally, when they realize what I'm going on, I go to court, and then I talk to somebody, and it almost always, I mean, Peter only was the only trial I've had on a zoning case in the 4 years I've been here. And I think Peter just likes to visit me is what it is, he's been back since.
I
so-
hear Brody even says he's a very nice guy to talk to, very knowledgeable, but,
Oh, he's very interesting, yeah. So, yeah, we got along pretty well, but it still went to trial. He wasn't too angry about it, and he actually has moved the car. So he took the
I know
same
the
case, went to
car's
trial in
moved.
2016, all the same issues. And he didn't move them then, but he moved them now. So I told Bertie, I think he just likes that.
so then in the nuclear bomb case, like it exists behind Larissa, this is like the most extreme option.
Yes, because this wouldn't fit. I mean, I think even putting 100 counts of minor misdemeanors is
Yeah.
a low ball on what you'd have to do to get motivation for this to be clean.
So here, I believe the process would be you're asking for the preliminary injunction, that's gonna have a hearing within 28 days, it sounds like. But, I mean, if the condition worsens, so say the preliminary is granted and the condition worsens, that judge is not going to be pleased and is going to have
That's a contempt hearing.
a bigger stick to deal
Yeah.
with than just civil fines.
What's interesting about this particular case is, this is the building that needs to be demolished also. I mean, this isn't just dangerous.
You mean the one behind Larissa's house that, yeah, you can see it.
The structure.
Looks like it's gonna fall
Yeah,
down.
the structure is not safe. When I talked to the fire department, they said they had it classified as a vacant building, but because they've tried to reach out to the owner and contact him and he has not returned their calls, they were changing their classification to vacant. That gave them some additional latitude. I don't know specifically what that does, but they've recognized it as a problem too. That's on their list of do not go in buildings.
Yeah, and
I mean, this is major. I mean, this is.
that's what some, like, villages especially run into with these, is if you don't necessarily want to end up owning the property at the end of it, you may not want to institute this type of action.
Oh, okay.
But we don't have to own it. We can
No, but
fix it.
you can let it go, yeah, it gets
When the
complex
cost
once
is
it comes
so high
down.
that, then it outweighs. If it costs the city so much to tear that building down and clean it enough and then exceed what that property is worth or what that lien is on that, then essentially.
Like, yeah, those are what those grant programs are for, that
Yeah.
the state's releasing the county, too,
Yeah,
so.
but this is a drag on a bunch of homes.
Oh, yeah.
All the homes
Sure.
down that
On the
street.
business.
Lowers the property.
Yeah, yeah, you're right on those businesses too, because I drove through the business side of it. There's
There's some
some
really
decent looking businesses back there, and then they got this junkyard next to them. It's really ridiculous. So, okay.
So we're not
couple
acting
questions.
as your attorney, we're acting on behalf, so
No,
you
that's
could
a-
consult an attorney as well.
That is okay. That-
So, a couple of questions from a non-attorney. Larissa, just thank you for your patience with all of this. So this started in the middle of 2021, right? Now, will this new, at least that's the earliest date I see in here.
Yeah, I can't remember when we first, I think, honestly, I think was we're around when we first started discussing this property, probably.
This property has never been great, but it was upon the eviction of Mark Hardy from TMT where he had to transplant. He was forced to take all of his stuff, put it on this property. So
He owned that property, did he not?
he was a renter of TMT,
Okay.
but he owns this back building down the street.
So one of my questions is, this has been on, we've been developing this new process since some point in time.
Since November of 2021.
So it took us approximately 5-6 months to develop this process, right?
Mostly,
To identify it and navigate it, I guess.
In terms of an abatement.
We didn't create it, we just had to wrap our head around how do you actually do it.
So if this same thing happened in the future, 2 years from now, how long will it take to implement this kind of process?
Well, it won't put in mine, I would imagine it would not take as long.
no, it won't be.
Probably
as long as
45
it took
days.
Because I want to go to class.
Yeah.
Learn
Okay.
to do this.
I have your complaint already.
So
And I already have the complaint.
For me, so like this started, so I can't file an abatement as a criminal prosecutor. So that was part of it. And none of the law directors in Perrysburg ever had done them. So I went to Bridget, I think it was probably November, December last year. And I said, this is really what needs to happen. I don't understand why we're not doing it. And I asked her, has anyone ever done them? You know, in my 4 years experience, I haven't seen it. She said, no, we never did it. She didn't even know really what it was. So what I did is I wrote up a memo for her, sent it for her, and then I had a meeting with Bridget, Kate, and zoning back in January to say, this is the process, this is what I think needs to be done to a handful of properties that we have, because they just don't fit the minor misdemeanor zoning violations. It's not, it doesn't have to get it done. And they're way too important to just put 100 minor misdemeanors on, because it's not gonna get, it'll take a year before anything goes anywhere. So,
The question-
but it shouldn't take that long.
The question was asked too about, how many of these, and I think we're able to, on our initial interaction with folks, determine how likely is it going to be that we're going to resolve this, because it doesn't take long to figure that out. But this situation, the abatement thing would probably work extremely well for somebody like Louis Bauer, that you just can't pin down. He doesn't have anything. We had judgments of $10,000 against Louis Bauer for years, but he's not collectible.
But see,
Drilling.
but even so, even that's a good example of, he's got two different kinds of cases. So he's got the one with the house, and then the one with the car wash, correct? With the house, he works with me. Because he lives there, he wants me, it's not an issue. He comes in, he'll clean this up, it might take him a while, and he and his wife will come in, have conversations with me, clean up. When it comes to the business that he's got all these financial issues on, we haven't been able to get him doing, it's completely different. So I just think, especially corporations, business, big properties, big messes, this would be a much quicker way to get some progress.
So you've helped the city a lot. Unfortunately, you've sat there for, has it been over a year?
It's been just about a year. I've tried to be very patient. It's just, I'm stuck at this point. I spent, as I explained to you, quite a few of you, I spent all last summer completely gutting out all the weeds and overgrown trees and bushes that were along the backside of my fence line, so that this summer we could do privacy fence, obviously planning and zoning and permits and everything, but to do a privacy fence so we could improve the backyard for the kids to play in. Then along with that, I had ripped out our back deck. So right now I have no deck on the back of my house, in hopes that I would be able to do that along with the privacy fence, in addition to replacing our driveway completely. So I've been working a lot with the bank and trying to look at refinancing for myself so I could afford to do all of this. And once they had came out and kind of reviewed everything I wanted to do, there was an issue with looking over that fence line, saying the value is not what we thought it was. This has really depreciated the value. So me, I'm not wanting to take out that extra loan to do what I wanted to do because I can't take out as much as I wanted to do everything all at once rather than little by little. And who wants to put up a brand new white vinyl privacy fence when you have all that going on? You know it, you just know in the back of your mind it's going to get ruined, you know, on the other side. So I don't know. I've wrote all the letters. I tried to research it myself. I'm not an attorney, but I tried to research myself the proper way, aside all feelings. You know, what is wrong here? The overgrown grass, the littering. I mean, if you even walk back there, I took a walk through last night, and just the amount of like wires and cords and just odds and ends. It's just, I wouldn't want my kid to lose a ball back there and go back on their own. I don't want the neighbor's dog to go back there and who
No,
knows?
some of these
but-
photos, you can see the tines sticking up. You
The
wouldn't want your
foundation.
kids anywhere near that, and kids are gonna
Right.
see this stuff. The day we were there, your son was kinda edging over here
Yeah,
until you pulled him back.
It's intriguing to him, you know, he wants to explore and see what
There's
things
toys
are
over there.
and how they work.
That's the
And-
way kids think.
So going back to the post timeline then, August 1st was when this will be hopefully filed. And then,
August 1st is a weekend day, but whatever that.
yeah, approximately. And then it's 28 days, is that the, you call it the preliminary injunction? Is that what that's called?
Yes,
And then what does it look like after that?
that is up to the judge, to be perfectly
Depending on
honest. The
whether
judge
there's
can
liens.
decide whether or not they want to give additional time for the property owner to abate this, or whether or not they feel that enough time has been given, at which point, then they open it up for anyone who has an interest in the property to abate it, and if they don't, then we can step in and request that we be given permission to abate the property.
Then you'd have the time involved to hire a contractor
And then we
to
have to
drive all this junk out.
Yes, and keep in mind that we have to, I mean, yes, we can put liens on the property, but we'll have to front the money. So at a certain point, if it costs more than $25,000, which legitimately it could, we may have to have a conversation with city council about paying to do this. And it's not in, I mean, this is one of those things that as we're doing our budget for the law department, we may need to have a conversation with city council about if we're going to do this, we need to think about this being a line item for the law department to be able to pay for these sorts of things.
Yeah, I think council will support that. You
The
can't-
very I can say is, so, for example, I spoke to Brian Ballinger, you know Brian.
He's doing is he doing the Northwood Hotel one, right?
He does stuff all the time. He's got, you know, he has, the motel there, and then he also has, Great Eastern, which is a huge issue, it's been going on for years. So, he is the law director for Dorfoot, Walbridge, and Genoa, so he's familiar with it. And he says, as far as Wood County and the judges, he's never had issues, but they all are, you know, very favorable. He says, they live in Wood County, they want it to look nice, they have an interest in it. And I think, like, when I spoke to her, this is one that it wouldn't matter. You don't need to be a lawyer to understand that this, nobody wants to live next to this. You don't have to be a real estate agent to understand that this is going to depreciate for home value, or ability to get an equity loan or refinancing or doing any of those things. Or the attractive nuisance that it's dangerous. And like you said to her, thanking her for coming in. I know I spoke to you, I didn't realize it was you at some point, and I did say the same thing to her. I mean, she's polite, appropriate, patient, but also very persistent, which is exactly what she needed to be. Really kind of the perfect test case to have somebody that's going to not let it go, not let anyone drop the ball, and make sure it's long. So.
I am a very persistent person. I'll just say this. I think about, and I'm sure all of you have kids, or most of you have kids, but you always are reminded you have 18 summers with your children before they turn of age, and then they're out on their own. So this being one of those summers, it's like, it might just be a backyard to some people, but it's like our retreat, and knowing that it's safe, or it should be safe. And you want your kids to be able to go outside and not have to sit and monitor them closely. You know, if they go out back, I should be able to say, okay, I'll see you in a few minutes, or, you know, not, trailing behind them like, wait, don't touch that, don't go that way. But it's just 18, that's all you get. And I just feel like this one, I'm sure he has children or has children in his family that I have not approached him at all, but to be a little more understanding, or even a little bit of compassion and understanding that as a neighboring resident, that we have children. And it seems like most of those big equipment pieces are right up along the fence line, but.
Well, yeah, I think any judge down there in Bowling Green to get that, as China said, they're gonna look at this and say, this is just deplorable, so. So we'll get after that. I'm glad Barry drew out the timeline. Unfortunately, I don't see this summer that you've got this cleaned up. But, I see a path where, by early next year, maybe we can have something done. And it sounds like this is the only, well, it doesn't sound like it is the only real effective way to deal with a mess like this. So we'll kick it off in August. And I don't know if you want to be kept abreast of the lawsuit, should she contact Brody or you, or?
I'll keep Brody up to date, since you already have a relationship there, as we make progress. I mean, in a dream world, you'll just see us out there ripping things out one day, and it'll be like
I
magic.
would love that, and I would love to even
Cleans it
help.
up on its own when it gets to that point and he fails.
I don't think you.
No,
Thank you.
So I had a whole presentation, by the way, on how to do this, but then we got to talking.
we don't need a legal seminar.
So-
I'm not,
No, I
we appreciate
I have
your
high
study.
requirements.
There was a whole, here's the
I'm up to date on my
injunction,
CLE.
We appreciate that.
and here's how we do it, and here's how we get paid for it, and here are the essential steps.
I could have used some transitions, like
Yeah.
I'm sliding over and stuff.
You give me some CLE credit.
Yeah, I had the fade in, the fade out, some word
I'm
art.
sad that you didn't want to watch my
You could send it to me, I'll take it. I'll put it in my file of CLE folder, like
You
content.
can send it to a CLE or something.
Yeah.
Well, I stole it from a CLE, so.
Oh, well, all right, then I don't feel so bad for it.
That's- All right, well, let's do that, Larissa, thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I did have a related question, Brody. If you look at this one picture, and Larissa pointed this out, we're at her house, there's an electrical utility pole. Can Edison get to that? I mean, did Edison do anything about stuff like that? Because like, we were talking that day we were at her house, if the power ever went out, I don't know if Edison can get to that thing. I mean, it's hard to tell in the photo, but there's just junk all around.
Can I just chime in on that? The most recent update, there is now a red pickup truck that he has pulled out from way behind the building, and it's literally like bordering our property lines, but it's right underneath the poles.
Yeah.
So I have tried to reach out to the utility company.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Unfortunately, I've been placed on hold so many times that my lunch break elapses before I can get to anyone. But my fear is if something happens and it needs to be serviced, they may not want their crew even stepping foot back there because there's so much going on. It could be a liability for their employees.
You know, I just kind of wonder, I'm glad you tried to, but I wouldn't expect you to have to spend hours or days with the utility company. But I got to believe like these utility companies got some remedies where you can't put a bunch of junk around their poles. And they're going to, I would think they have some authority to come in and pull that stuff out of the way.
They would have right-of-way language that.
But only to service the line though, they don't do it.
They have access rights to it.
Okay.
Yeah, that, their easement would receive, it would be where to access, maintenance, repair,
Oh, okay.
construct.
They also, utilize bucket trucks and things like that with a fairly significant reach on them. So
Sure.
even if it's in the basement, it would probably take more than this to prevent them from accessing the pool, but obviously it's not desirable.
Yeah.
We haven't
They
had
try to
particularly
respect customers as possible.
good luck with trying to deal with pole issues.
I don't know. It's never-
Is what I will say.
Well, they're friendly with customers, not municipalities or
Yeah, there you go.
likewise,
We have a clean pole in the city that nobody wants.
when it comes to property. It's
Yeah.
different than this.
Yeah,
Fires,
You have to deal with it.
but
yeah.
nobody will take ownership of it to make it stand straight.
They're kind of unreliable. All right, is there any other business? It's not on the agenda, so she didn't include a category for other business.
That means I have nothing to say.
All right, thanks.
Write that down.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Write that down.
Hey, well, if that other business reappears.
We're gonna need a copy